Today, Zach Roloff and Divorce Today. Zach Roloff cheat to Tori Roloff. Finally, Zach Roloff marriage her secret girlfriend. I will explain everything. Hello and welcome. What you are about to hear is a story that has been developing in the shadows, away from the glare of the TLC cameras and the curated perfection of social media. It's a story of love, loss, and the devastating cost of a family feud. It's the story of the end of Zach and Tori Roloff. The news, when it finally broke, sent shockwaves through the loyal fanbase. A quiet divorce filing in Clark County, Washington. No dramatic announcements, no tearful confessionals on television. Just a legal document that signaled the end of one of reality TV's most beloved couples. But the divorce itself isn't the whole story. It's not even the most shocking part. To understand how we got here, we have to go back, not just a few months, but years. We have to revisit the place where it all began and where it all fell apart, Roloff Farms. Roloff Farms was more than just a plot of land in Helvetia, Oregon. For Zach Roloff, it was his entire world. It was his playground, his workplace, his heritage. It was the legacy he believed he was destined to inherit. When he met Tori Patton in 2010, a kindergarten teacher with a warm smile and an easy laugh, he wasn't just bringing her into his life, he was bringing her into the heart of that legacy. Their courtship was a central storyline on the show. We watched their first dates, their engagement amidst the pumpkin patch, and their beautiful wedding on the very land that defined Zach's identity. That dream seemed to be coming true. They had their first son, Jackson, followed by their daughter, Lila. They were the picture of a happy, growing family, living just a stone's throw away from the main farmhouse. Tori seamlessly integrated into the Roloff world, embracing the chaos of pumpkin season and the constant presence of the television crew. She was, by all accounts, the perfect partner for Zach, supportive and grounded. But a shadow was looming, and that shadow was cast by the very man who built the dream, Matt Roloff. The central conflict, the one that would ultimately poison everything, was the future of the farm. As Matt and Amy's marriage dissolved, the question of who would take over the farm became a source of palpable tension. For years, the narrative pushed by the show, and by Zach himself, was that he would be the one. He was the only one of the 4 Roloff children who had consistently worked on the farm, who showed a genuine passion for its operations. The negotiations began in earnest in 2021, and this is where the first fatal crack appeared in Zach and Tori's foundation. We all watched it play out, but perhaps we didn't grasp the true depth of the betrayal Zach felt. According to Zach, the negotiations were not conducted in good faith. He felt his father saw him not as a son carrying on a legacy, but as just another buyer. Tori was right there, in the eye of the storm. She witnessed her husband's heartbreak firsthand. She saw the man she loved being, in his view, stonewalled and disrespected by his own father. And she was fiercely protective. Those words were more prophetic than she could have ever imagined. The farm deal didn't just fall through. It exploded. It created a rift between Zach and Matt that would prove to be irreparable. In a move that shocked everyone, Matt put a portion of the farm, the very portion Zach wanted, up for public sale. He even converted the family home into a short-term rental. For Zach, this was the ultimate betrayal. The home he grew up in, the land he bled for, was now available to rent for any stranger with a credit card. The message was clear: legacy didn't matter as much as money. This bitterness didn't just stay between father and son. It seeped into Zach and Tori's marriage. The farm wasn't just a piece of property, it was their future, their shared dream. And it had been snatched away. A source close to the family at the time told a tabloid, Zach was a different person after that. The light in his eyes dimmed. He felt like his entire childhood and his future were invalidated. Tori tried to be strong, but she was watching her husband sink into a deep depression, and she felt powerless. The dream was dead, and in its place grew resentment. In October 2021, seeking a fresh start and desperate to put physical distance between themselves and the source of their pain, Zach and Tori made a life-altering decision. They bought a $1 million home in Battleground, Washington, an hour away from Roloff Farms. On the surface, it was a beautiful new beginning. A bigger house, more land for their children, now including their third child, Josia, to play on. But in reality, it was an exile. They had left their community, their friends, and the family support system they relied on. They were now on an island, just the two of them and their 3 young children. And this is where the dynamic between them began to subtly, but irrevocably, shift. In Oregon, Tori had her own life. She was a teacher, she had her own friends. On the farm, she had a role. In Washington, she became almost solely defined by her role as a wife and mother, and increasingly as a social media influencer. Her Instagram account, which had always been popular, became her primary connection to the outside world and a significant source of income. She began posting more sponsored content, more day-in-the-life stories. It was a necessity, but it also meant their new life, their escape from the public eye of the farm, was now being documented and monetized in a different way, a way that was entirely controlled by Tori. Zach, on the other hand, seemed to retreat further into himself. The show depicted him as a dedicated stay-at-home dad, but sources close to them paint a more complicated picture. Zach felt adrift. One insider claimed, the farm gave him his identity. In Washington, he was Tori's husband and the guy from the TV show. He didn't have a purpose that was his own. He loved his kids more than anything, but he was struggling with who he was as a man. The pressure on their marriage intensified. They were navigating the immense challenges of raising 3 children, 2 of whom have achondroplasia, and the significant health challenges that come with it. Jackson's leg surgery, Lilith's health scares. These are monumental stresses for any couple. But Zach and Tori were facing them in a new town, with a fractured family support system, and with the lingering ghost of the farm haunting their every move. The cracks that had formed during the farm dispute began to splinter. Fans started to notice a change. In Tori's vibrant, curated online world, Zach was becoming a less frequent presence. When he did appear, he often looked tired or detached. On the show, their arguments became more frequent and less playful. There were disagreements about parenting, about finances, and most tellingly, about their future on the show. In early 2024, they officially announced they were leaving Little People, Big World after the 25th season. On their podcast, Zach made his reasons crystal clear. While they presented a united front, sources allege this was a major point of contention. Tori, while understanding Zach's reasons, was hesitant to let go of the platform and the very lucrative income it provided. It was their main source of financial stability. Zach, however, was desperate to cut the final cord. He felt the show was a constant reminder of the family drama and prevented him from ever truly moving on. That was the final power struggle, a production insider alleges. Zach put his foot down. He essentially said, "It's the show, or it's me." He wanted a real, private life, and felt the show made that impossible. Tori had built a career around sharing her life. Their fundamental desires were now in direct opposition. They quit the show, but the damage was done. They were now just 2 people in a big house in Washington, with a mountain of resentment and unspoken grief between them. The thing that brought them together, the show, the farm, the family, had become the very thing that tore them apart. After the announcement of their departure from the show, a strange quiet fell over the Zach and Tori household, at least publicly. Tori's Instagram remained active, but eagle-eyed followers noticed a distinct shift. The gushing posts about Zach, the loving tributes on his birthday or their anniversary, were replaced with more general, kid-focused content. The candid shots of them together on the couch were gone. In their place were photos of Tori with her friends, or solo shots with cryptic captions about finding strength and new seasons. A post from May 2024, for instance, featured a picture of a sunset with the caption, "Sometimes the most beautiful skies come after the most violent storms. Trusting the process." At the time, it seemed like a generic inspirational quote. In hindsight, it was a breadcrumb. Sources now confirm that by the spring of 2024, Zach and Tori were living separate lives under the same roof. It was an arrangement for the kids. A person claiming to be a neighbor in Battleground reported to an online forum. They were civil, but not couple. They were co-parents, roommates. The tension was palpable. You could feel it from across the street. Zach had reportedly checked out emotionally. His focus was solely on Jackson, Lila, and Joja. He spent his days taking them to appointments, playing with them in the yard, and creating a bubble of normalcy for them amidst the silent collapse of their parents' marriage. Tori, meanwhile, threw herself into her work and her friendships. She took trips with her girlfriends, ramped up her influencer partnerships, and began projects around the house. Projects that Zach was conspicuously absent from. She was building a new life for herself, piece by piece, right in front of our eyes, but we were too busy looking at the finished product to notice the deconstruction happening in the background. The divorce filing, which occurred in late August 2024, was a mere formality. The marriage, for all intents and purposes, had been over for months. The legal document, citing the standard irreconcilable differences, was filed quietly in Clark County. There was no media circus, no tip-off to the press. They were hoping to handle it privately, away from the prying eyes that had defined their entire relationship. Of course, in the digital age, no secret lasts forever. A week after the filing, a local court reporter cross-referencing names for a different story stumbled upon the filing. Tori Roloff versus Victoria Roloff. The news broke on a small, local news blog before being picked up by national outlets. The fairy tale was officially over. 2 days later, they released a joint statement on their Instagram stories, a sterile, carefully worded message. After much soul-searching, we have made the difficult decision to separate. We will continue to be devoted co-parents to our 3 beautiful children, who are our top priority. This was a mutual decision, and we move forward with respect for one another. We appreciate your grace and ask for privacy as we navigate this new chapter for our family. But the unified front quickly crumbled. Days later, Tori posted a tearful, since deleted story. It was just her face, red-eyed, with the song Enough for You by Olivia Rodrigo playing. The caption read, "Some things you just can't fight for anymore." Zach remained silent. He deactivated his Instagram account. He disappeared. And this is where the story takes a turn that no one, not even the most cynical critics of the family, could have predicted. While Tori was publicly processing her grief and embracing her new role as a resilient single mother, Zach Roloff had vanished from the public eye. Many assumed he was simply hiding, licking his wounds, and trying to find his footing away from the spotlight he claimed to despise. The truth is far more complex. Zach wasn't just hiding. He was healing. And he wasn't doing it alone. For the past year, a new woman has been in his life. A woman who is the complete antithesis of the reality TV world he was so desperate to escape. Her name is Hannah Miller. So, who is Hannah Miller? Our investigation has pieced together a portrait of the woman who has captured Zach Roloff's heart. Hannah is 33 years old, a pediatric physical therapist at a specialized clinic in the Vancouver, Washington area. She holds a doctorate in physical therapy from a university in the Pacific Northwest. She is intensely private, with no public social media accounts. She has never seen a full episode of Little People, Big World. According to a source who works at the clinic, that is where they met. Zach brought one of his kids in for a consultation in early 2024, before the divorce was public knowledge, but when he and Tori were clearly on the outs. Hannah was assigned to his case. There was an immediate connection, but it was purely professional at first. She treated him like any other concerned parent, not a TV star. I think that was a massive thing for him. This source claims that over several months of appointments, a friendship developed. Zach would talk to her about the difficulties of raising kids with unique physical challenges. He found someone who not only understood the medical side of it, but who had a deep, genuine compassion for it. She saw him as a dad, not as Zach Roloff, He opened up to her about his struggles with his family and the pressures of his life. She just listened, without judgment. Their friendship blossomed in secret. They would meet for coffee in small, out-of-the-way cafes. They would take walks in parks far from his neighborhood in Battleground. For Zach, this was a life he had never known, an anonymous life. With Hannah, he wasn't a spectacle. He was just a man. The physical differences, something that was a constant topic of conversation on the show, and in his relationship with the average height Tori, was a non-issue with the average height Hannah. She was interested in his heart and his mind. The source continues. She fell for the devoted father and the kind, wounded man underneath the public persona. His dwarfism was a part of him, but it didn't define him in her eyes, and that was liberating for him. This secret relationship provided Zach with the strength and resolve he needed to finally end his broken marriage and walk away from the show. Hannah represented everything he now craved: privacy, normalcy, and a life where his worth wasn't measured by TV ratings or the ownership of a farm. While Tori was posting about storms and new seasons, Zach was quietly building a new foundation with someone who had no interest in the world that had nearly destroyed him. The divorce between Zach and Tori was finalized in early December 2024. The terms were kept private, but it's understood that they agreed to 50-50 custody of the children, and Tori would remain in the Battleground home, which Zach signed over to her as part of the settlement. To the world, it looked like the end of a sad chapter. But just 2 weeks ago, on a sunny Saturday in June 2025, the most shocking development of all occurred. Zach Roloff and Hannah Miller were married. The ceremony was the polar opposite of his televised wedding to Tori. It wasn't held on Roloff Farms with hundreds of guests and a television crew. It was held in the backyard of Hannah's parents' modest home in a quiet suburb of Portland, Oregon. There were fewer than 30 people in attendance. The guest list is the most telling part of the story. Zach's best man was his 7-year-old son, Jackson. His daughters, Lila and Joja, were there. Amy Roloff and her husband, Chris Marek, were present. Amy can be seen in one photo, wiping away a tear, looking both happy for her son and pained by the circumstances. But who was not there is just as important. Matt Roloff was not invited. Jeremy, Audrey, Jacob, and Molly were also not in attendance, likely to avoid picking sides in the still raw family feud. And, of course, Tori was not there. A guest at the wedding, who spoke to us on the condition of anonymity, described the event. It was all about them. It was simple, heartfelt, and incredibly emotional. When Zach read his vows, he talked about feeling lost for a long time and how Hannah didn't just help him find his way, she helped him find himself.